Our latest deep dive skimmed the surface on reproductive care and data privacy. Today, we have an expert from Congress joining us to explain a bit more about period tracking apps and why the government so badly wants your data. I'm Maggie Gelson Burnett.
And I'm Mallory Hagan. This is Pretty Furious. Oh, gosh.
Pew, 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 period tracking apps.
Well,
Yeah, just wowzers. We have Congresswoman Sarah Jacobs joining us today. She's going to tell us a little bit more about all of the period tracking apps, why
and
we should care.
I was going to say, even if you're not a person tracking your period, even if you're not a woman, you should care
Yeah.
because this pertains to all of our data, all of our security, and the ability for our government to overlord us.
And it's scurvy, people.
Yeah,
So.
there's some stuff going on that's a little alarming, a lot alarming, actually.
It's a bit jarring. But before we get into everything, we want to be sure everybody is following us. So we are at Pretty Furious Pod literally everywhere that you can find us, most notably on Substack. That's where we house our platform and our podcast. So give us a follow there, and you can access all of our deep dives by becoming a paid subscriber.
We would love that. Thank you. Maggie, last week I said I would give everyone an update on something.
I can't wait.
Do you know what it is?
Pew, 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 gas prices.
Nothing makes me feel old like being worried about
gas prices.
No, I honestly like driving down the road, looking at gas and going, oh, did you see that it's, insert number here? And then I'm like, oh my God.
It's crazy.
What's the insurance company where the commercials are you become like your parents?
Oh yeah, Allstate or whatever.
That's how I feel tracking the gas prices. But anyway, so last week I told everyone that gas was $3.53, and that was up from $3.01, up from $2.90. And so this week we made a joke that we would just start tracking gas prices, but gas is nearly $3.90 a gallon.
Okay, so
quite the increase.
So is that in 2 weeks it jumped, or in 2 or 3 weeks, give or take, it jumped over $1?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
That's crazy. That is wild. I just said that
this administration's making things more affordable for everyone.
Yeah, your eggs are cheaper, your gas is cheaper, healthcare is cheaper.
Yeah.
You're doing great, sweetie.
Winning.
I love that.
All friends.
My headline this week that I would just like to share with everybody that made me pretty furious. It also makes me kind of like giggle because I just think that this man is like the personification of a fart. Is Mark Wayne Mullen. So first of all,
who names their kid Mark Wayne?
Mark Wayne. I literally like that's like a vocal stim for me now. Like, do you watch The Pit?
No.
Oh my God.
I feel like everyone talks about it.
You have to watch The Pit where like Nurse Dana does this. She says, "Baby Jane Dow," and she like it's like a super Philly accent. Like that's like a vocal stim for me. And this is Mark Wine. That's becoming a vocal stim for me. So anyway, okay. So this headline's from CNN and it says Mullen's nomination to lead DHS advances after Fetterman joins with Republicans in the vote. So he got a lovely vote of approval from Democratic Senator John Fetterman, who is like Mark Wayne Mullen is Mullen. Mark Wayne Mullen. He is the personification of a fart. I think that John Fetterman is the personification of just like a boob. Like this guy fucking sucks. He is, I don't like how he is a Democratic senator is honestly beyond me. Yeah, I don't even know what to do with this man. Like he just votes in line with Republicans on everything. And it's so fucking bizarre. But yeah, anyway, so that's pissing me off. And like, once again, I am asking who the fuck names their kid Mark Wayne, all one word. Anyway.
Yeah, Fetterman. So interesting. We were having a conversation about him at dinner the other night. And I was saying, I'm really not a fan of the conversation typically around someone's mental fitness. Like, I think that's just lazy that they did it to Biden, and
Mm-hmm.
I don't think that Donald Trump is mentally fit, but you don't even have to be worried about his mental ability. You can just see his actions, and that makes him unfit. So like, as much as we all laugh and we're like, "Oh, he's, mentally unwell." Like he is, but I genuinely do not think that John Fetterman is mentally well. I think since he had his stroke, he's genuinely like not all there.
I
And
agree.
for me, that is extremely problematic because his vote doesn't just impact, you know, Pennsylvania, as we all.
Yeah.
And it really is alarming to me that more people are not pointing out the fact that he like can't string sentences together.
Yeah. And his
He
like former staff members have all come out and said crazy shit about
like
like, yeah, meetings they've had. Yeah, it's nuts.
he shouldn't be a senator. And
Mhm.
and I don't know why Democrats aren't saying like, kindly, thank you for your service, but you need to go and you need to go.
You guts to go. Yeah.
You need to go now, like ASAP.
Well, and I think I mean, it's frustrating too because he's voting Republican on all of these really important issues. He's voting to confirm all of these people to the cabinet, but I think also what sucks is like what it's a double-edged sword for Democrats because they have so many other like bigger fucking problems that they're probably thinking about to where they're like, okay, how does his place in Senate impact like, on the grand scheme or the broader scheme of things? Like how does this impact everything? And like what are the things we actually have to be focusing on? So it sucks because then it's like they probably feel like they can't really,
Yeah.
do a
I
whole
guess
lot,
there also is probably some consideration for whether or not his seat in a special election or something of that
Right.
nature would be
Mhm.
would remain Democratic. But I don't know. It just irritates me because it's very clear. It's very
Yeah.
clear that he's not
Mhm.
well, and it's alarming.
Absolutely.
Okay, so
Yeah.
so my headline has to do with TSA. Anyone who's traveling right now knows that TSA agents are not being paid, and therefore airports are a freaking mess. Wait times, I'm reading, are over 2 hours for TSA. But I just want to point out that Border Patrol and ICE agents are still getting paid. So that makes sense because
Literally.
Border Patrol and ICE agents shouldn't be getting paid, A, because we need reform. And in order to make that reform, somebody has to do the work. But people, everyday people who are just trying to like travel for work or for their life are being impacted by the stupidity of this administration once again. So anyway.
Did you see the picture of Nancy Mace skipping the TSA line when
No. Was she wearing her
like
pajamas and drunk while she was at it?
she looked like shit, first of all, let's be clear. But she like was skipping the line and it's like, girl, you voted for this to happen. So like like you should be forced to fucking wait in line. Yeah. Yeah. No, in all seriousness though, I have heard that there are TSA employees who are like sleeping in their cars now. They are starting GoFundMe's because they aren't being paid. So they have to pay their bills somehow and like continue to live. So yeah, it's just a clusterfuck. It is added to the laundry list of just the shit show that is going on in America right now. So yeah, that's fucked up, man. Not
But
great.
you know who is giving us hope?
Congresswoman Jacobs.
Yeah, she is.
Yes. We have Congresswoman Sarah Jacobs joining us today. She proudly serves California's 51st congressional district, and she's very, very cool. Congresswoman Jacobs is a member of the House Foreign Affairs Committee and the House Armed Services Committee. In the House Democratic Caucus, she serves as the parliamentarian. At just 37 years old, she is one of the youngest members of Democratic House leadership. Before Congress, she worked at the UN, UNICEF, the State Department, and on Secretary Hillary Clinton's 2016 presidential campaign. And she served as the founding CEO of the international education nonprofit Project Connect and as founding chair of a nonprofit coalition to end child poverty, San Diego for Every Child. Wow.
Oh, I'm tired.
Just, yeah, like wowzers. Way to feel like you've done literally nothing in your life. Anyway, we love her. We adore her. Let's welcome Senator. Nope. She's not a senator. Fuck. We love her. We adore her. Let's welcome Congresswoman Sarah Jacobs. Making me feel like a piece of shit. Congresswoman, thank you so much for joining us. We are so delighted to have you with us on Pretty Furious. You brought a headline that has made you pretty furious this week. Would you mind reading it for us?
I did. The headline is from The Cut, and it is What ICE Detention Does to a Child. Stunted growth, nightmares, bedwetting. These are just a few of the symptoms of our country's youngest detainees.
Woof. I think I have been thinking about this a lot as it relates to the whole kind of protect the kids of it all and how the Republican Party is really hell-bent on that being kind of their messaging. Mallory and I just did a deep dive episode on pronatalism and talking about the Republican Party and how they're actually not concerned with the protecting all kids, it's protecting white Christian children. So, and even that is kind of, I would say, a stretch of verbiage. So, yeah, it's just insane what is happening in these detention centers, and so much that we don't know about either.
Yeah, it's really horrible. I actually went to visit the Dilley Detention Center where a lot of these kids are being held. And the stories I heard were, I mean, it's state sanctioned child abuse, frankly. Like,
Mhm.
or she'd been picked up when she was 2 months postpartum. She was still breastfeeding. She was recovering from a C-section. She has not seen her child now for 5 months. He's now 7 months old.
Oh my God.
Yes, like it is horrible. It is truly, it is like I don't even really have words to describe it.
No.
And then when these anxious toddlers go to the medical unit say like, well, they haven't lost enough weight, so it's not an issue yet. Like the callousness.
Oh my
Callousness.
God. Yeah.
Oh my God, I'm getting emotional.
That is awful.
Maggie knows that I am almost 6 months postpartum, and like I'm not well when I don't see my baby throughout the day because we have a nanny here. I can't imagine
Yeah.
not seeing him for 5 months. Oh my God.
Yeah.
That's
And especially dealing too with already like postpartum is already such a incredibly fragile, delicate time for any new mom. I won't even say most, I would say any. And what we know is that, you know, moms don't actually, I just found this out recently and I'm 6 months pregnant, so this is like blows my mind that women don't actually like their hormones and everything don't stabilize until about 3 years postpartum. So to be already in the thick of that, already dealing with like just the kind of clusterfuck that is, you know, being postpartum and like having a baby and the trauma that comes with that process, regardless of if you have a perfect birth or not. And then dealing with losing your child in the entire like mix of it. It is the most inhumane thing I think I've heard coming out of this administration, and that's saying a lot because this is a grossly inhumane administration that we're seeing. So
yeah.
And not to mention like these families, like most of them had actually come here legally, either under temporary protected status or to seek asylum, which is a legal process. They were doing everything right. They were going to all of their appointments, like the Gomez Cuellar family, the mariachi family that we were fortunately able to help get out while we were there. But these folks aren't criminals. And frankly, even if the parents were criminals, we should not be blaming babies for what their parents did, and we should not be detaining them. We have normalized something that should never be normal, and that is locking up babies, literal babies.
yeah, yeah. That's something Mallory and I talk about a lot too, is that even in the entire, you know, grand scheme of this, like the due process that none of the like the no one's getting that in this entire scheme. And like just because even if you were a criminal, that does not mean that like you just get to be treated like completely inhumanely with no rights and no, you know, like people have rights. This is what this is like. So it just blows my mind that people think that, oh, just because somebody is a criminal, and that is a broad range too, that they can be treated like this. So yeah.
Yeah, we this is a great segue to some of the work that you have been doing. Just in general, I think this administration doesn't see many of us as human, and particularly women. Our reproductive rights have been on the line for over a decade now, and we're seeing the repercussions of that. We're also in this weird, like, tech overlord, strange place as a society, and that's converging with our reproductive rights. And that's something that you've been working on. So the My Body, My Data Act, has served as a framework for Washington State's My Health, My Data Act, and as well as California's Confidentiality of Medical Information Act. So what is just most concerning to you about all of this and how our data is being used in regard to women's healthcare in America right now?
Yeah, I mean, I am so incredibly concerned about this because while the Dobbs decision was a decision about abortion, it was also a decision about privacy because in many cases, they have no way of being able to distinguish whether something was a natural miscarriage or an abortion, except by literally going into all of our data and seeing our search history and our location data. And the fact of the matter is, companies can buy and sell and share all of our data. There is no protection for it. And so I really got interested in this actually because I use a period tracking app. Like I'm a millennial. I use all the apps and all the things.
Mhm.
Um, and I started getting so many phone calls and things from peers, constituents asking what they should do about their period tracking apps. And I started looking into it. Like, there is no protection for this data. Companies can literally do whatever they want with it, including selling it or sharing it with law enforcement or DHS, and you have no way of stopping them. And we know that DHS and law enforcement is buying this commercially available data and then using it. In fact, we've seen in a lot of the cases of people who are uh, trying to criminalize abortion that this is the exact evidence they've been using. So a mother and daughter in Nebraska, it was their private Facebook messages that were being used to prosecute them for an abortion that was illegal under state law. So this is like really, really concerning. And then when you combine it with everything they're trying to do to restrict abortion access and women's reproductive health, and then you combine it with everything they're doing on like immigration and, surveillance more broadly of the American population, I'm like very concerned right now that we are seeing a confluence of the sort of surveillance technology into a surveillance
Mhm.
state that should not be allowed to happen here in the United States. And you look at the big fight the Defense Department had. I refuse to call it the Department of War. The Defense Department had with Anthropic.
Rightfully so.
Yeah.
Yeah. One of Anthropic's red lines that apparently the Department of Defense was mad about is that they would not allow their technology to be used for mass surveillance of Americans. Like the
Mhm.
idea that red line was somehow like too much for the Department of Defense, like, is really problematic. And next
Mhm.
week we're going to have a reauthorization of FISA, the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act, and I think it's incredibly important that we push for real privacy protections, for real judicial warrant protections, for making sure that Americans' Fourth Amendment rights are protected, whether you talk to someone in another country, whether that data was commercially available or not.
Mhm.
Mm. Mallory and I, like I said, we did this deep dive episode into pronatalism and talking about the trad wives of it all and how they just want more babies. And we sort of, I very briefly skimmed the surface on like what this looks like from a tech perspective and how there are people like Peter Thiel who are becoming involved in period tracking apps. And he became an investor for EV Magazine and then, decided to help them build a period tracking app. So what do you like? What is your take on like on that, on like Peter Thiel, somebody like that who has that kind of money and power, having access to that data, and then him and Palantir? Like, I just am so interested to know your thoughts on that, especially as somebody who's introduced legislation in regards to all of this.
Yeah, I mean, it's terrifying, and I think it goes to show how valuable this data is to them. Uh,
Mhm.
like we have seen reports that Palantir, like public reports, I have no inside information on this, but public reports that Palantir is trying to build a mega database on Americans. Like, this is really scary stuff. And we saw in Project 2025 that actually they want to create a national database of all pregnancies, which is even scarier. I mean, that is
It's so bizarre. Like,
dystopic.
ew. Yeah.
It
it's
is.
just like, gross.
But
Yeah.
I also think
why are you so obsessed with this?
Yeah. Why are you so obsessed with me? Like,
Yeah.
get out of here.
But I also think the problem that we're running into in the United States in particular is that constituents, citizens, women, their imagination is not wild enough for this scenario. You know, people look at those of us who are at protests and people who are wearing handmade stuff and people who reference The Handmaid's Tale. They look at all that and they think, that is insane. That's too far. Nobody would ever. And I regret to inform people that, like, having a national database of when women are menstruating, whether or not they're pregnant, whether or not they have miscarried or had an abortion, they're searching for those terms. All of those things lead to them knowing who is capable of having children and whether or not they have the ability to force those people to have children or not. And I really wish people would wake up and use their imagination just a little bit more in regard to this scenario, because we're already pretty far down the track.
I honestly, I feel like a crazy person sometimes.
Mhm.
I will say, I do think younger people get it more so.
Mhm.
I think that, like, when I talk to, I'm one of the youngest members of Congress. When I talk to my younger constituents, like, they see it more, but yeah, it's pretty fucking terrifying.
Yeah, totally. What do you think are some ways that women can maybe safeguard themselves from things like this? Like, I remember reading about the partnership that Aura Ring had with Palantir for the DoD, and I remember like going through all of their, their public statements about this and everything, and their CEO even released a video about it, and feeling like I was being like gaslit by this person, just being like, okay, hang on, like this is insane. And then that made me switch period tracking apps. Like, I ended up switching from Natural Cycles over to Stardust because they don't sell your data. So I know that that's probably one way, but are there any other things that women can be doing to protect themselves from these like tech overlords, scary people?
Yeah. So, I mean, look, one is reaching out to your members of Congress to get them onto the My Body, My Data bill, because it's actually like the majority of Americans, including the majority of Republicans, believe that Congress needs to act to address reproductive and sexual health data. The second is, something I always advise people is to use apps or things that are based in Europe, because they have to abide by the European data privacy rules, which are much stricter than ours. Also, like, and I'm guilty of this myself, despite being a very informed user, but like, don't allow cookies, turn your location tracking off. Like,
Right.
you have to go in and manually do all of those settings, but it is important that you do read the terms and conditions. Again, I myself am guilty of just like being in a rush and being like, yes, accept whatever.
Yeah.
Like, those
Download. Yeah.
yeah, and I would say the Electronic Frontier Foundation (EFF) has some really good resources on their website of things you can do to try and protect your data. But at the end of the day, like, it shouldn't be up to individual people to have to figure this out, and it shouldn't be up to companies doing the right thing. Like, this is literally why we have laws, and we need to make laws to protect this data.
Yeah,
You
totally.
mentioned that you're one of the youngest women in Congress, and I know that, and we appreciate you being at sort of the forefront of this fight about our reproductive health and the data surrounding it. But what are some of the other things that have surprised you about being one of the youngest women in Congress?
Yeah, it's so interesting. Well, on this one, I had to, explain to my colleagues that yes, we track our periods. Yes, there are apps that help you do that. Here's why we need to protect
Oh
it.
my God.
That's so funny to me.
Woman in House history to talk about my own period on the House floor. So
Wild.
lucky
Oh
me.
my God.
But like a lot of other things, like especially when we're talking about this kind of data situation, like, I'm a millennial and I grew up online. When we were debating the TikTok ban, for instance, like a lot of the fear mongering around TikTok was actually just how all social media companies use our data. Um, and I think it's pretty telling that like the 10 youngest members of Congress on both sides of the aisle voted against that TikTok ban because we actually understand how the internet works.
Yeah,
And
totally.
realize that like just banning one company, and like just banning one company is not going to fix this problem. It's a systemic problem, and singling out one company is not going to solve it. Like they don't need the Chinese Communist Party does not need to own an app to be able to manipulate the algorithm or to get that data. First of all, that data is available commercially through data brokers, and second of all, like we see the Russians manipulate algorithms all the time, and it's not because they like have the back end. And now we have a right-wing billionaire who controls that algorithm instead, and like that's not better.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
I remember watching one of the congressional hearings, and I can't remember who it was. And this is a little further back. We were talking about, Facebook and the ways that they had manipulated the political outcomes, or and the legislators that were older they just could not wrap their head around like how the internet makes money. Like I just remember being like, wow,
Term limits.
You really might not should be talking about this subject matter if you don't understand anything about how it works. And it's not like the internet was new. I mean, this is like less than a decade ago.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Term limits.
Yeah, exactly.
Although, like, in fairness, not all older people. Like my grandpa's 92 and he's the one who's like, hey Sarah, make sure you protect your data on this thing. So like,
Icon. Okay.
Fair
We
enough.
love that. We love that. Yeah. Yeah, I've gotten really down a rabbit hole of like privacy and security stuff. I just was on a training yesterday talking about like how to protect yourself from doxing online and things like that. And so shameless plug for places like Delete Me and Canary, I feel like are great places to be on. But another kind of facet that Republicans seem to love to chatter about and maybe also know nothing about is IVF. And you are a huge proponent of IVF. You introduced the IVF for Military Families Act. So I'm curious how, like, what's the reality, just to paint a picture for people, of how Republicans are viewing IVF and kind of like what were the promises made about it that have since been broken?
Yeah, so Donald Trump says he wants to be the IVF president and the fertilization president.
We heard this recently and we were like, that's disgusting.
Like I can't even say it because I get like creepy crawlies saying it. But anyways, yes, the fertilization president. But he's really done very little to nothing on this. And I will say it's actually a divide within the Republican Party. We have a bipartisan IVF for Military Families Act. There are a number of Republicans who are very supportive of IVF. And I will say it doesn't follow along like traditional lines. Like we've got some of the super moderate members of their conference who support IVF, and like some of the more out there members of their conference who support IVF. It's like it's kind of like cross-cutting in a way you wouldn't expect. But it's so interesting to me how little information people have about this. Like so basically when the Republicans who disagree with IVF and don't want to support it, their big thing is that they think that from the moment of conception, an embryo is a life. And in IVF, you create embryos. You don't always use all those embryos. And then there's like a variety of options you have on what to do with your embryos if you don't end up like implanting them all. Well, some of my Republican colleagues believe that that is murder because you are discarding these embryos.
Sure. Carry on.
And
logic
like,
doesn't follow everyone, but that's okay.
but like this is my favorite example of my colleagues not understanding how reproductive health works. So like I had a Republican colleague who wanted to introduce a 6-day abortion ban. Okay. You know, and I know that you don't start counting weeks of your pregnancy. You start at your last period.
Mhm.
Yeah,
So if
what?
you are, you literally can't be 6 days pregnant. You have not ovulated yet.
That is the
I
craziest thing I've ever heard.
Like,
it just never fails to amaze me how many people have opinions about things they do not know anything about.
Yeah, fully. Like, and different from having an opinion about, like, I don't watch reality TV, but I have an opinion on Taylor Frankie Paul. Like, very different. Like, not the same. Literally not the same at all. Like, that's crazy to me, especially as somebody who is currently pregnant and who, like, I tracked my cycle religiously. I knew exactly when I was ovulating. I knew exactly the day that I got pregnant. Like, knowing that information, it blows my mind that people don't comprehend how the female reproductive cycle works.
I mean, look, I'll be honest. Like, so I just froze my eggs
Nice.
over the summer for the second time. And like, they do not actually do a good job of teaching us about female
Mm-mm.
reproductive health, because I feel
Totally.
like I learned so much about my body going through that process that like I probably should have known, but like no one tells you these things.
We have talked about this at length that
Yes.
that it shouldn't have taken, until I was 35, 36 trying to get pregnant for me to be like, no, wait a minute. All through my teenage years, everyone made me feel like if I looked sideways, I was going to end up being pregnant.
Yep.
Meanwhile, I'm like counting days, hours, my temperature. Like, what do you mean?
Yeah.
It's not
Fully.
as easy as you think it is. And also, there are so many things that happen to our bodies that make it more difficult. There's so many things that happen to us during pregnancy that no one ever talked about. And then don't even get me started on women not being involved in like science and studies and clinical trials until the 80s and 90s. And so, yeah, there are so many things that we just didn't even know, those of us that are actually paying attention.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
now there's all this like misinformation because of that. And like I myself like get it, right? Like you're like, huh, what's this thing that's happening to me? I guess I'll check on the internet. And someone's like, oh yes, if you just take this supplement, you'll feel better. And I'm like, great, I want to feel better. Like,
Yeah, totally.
or like
Yeah.
I even stopped using hormonal birth control for a little while because I believed all the internet people who said it was like impacting my gut and all those things.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
because we don't do the actual education and because we have not actually studied women's health enough, and that's like actually a very real problem, it kind of like opens this window to like frankly all these grifters.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A lot of predatory behavior comes from our lack of information or misinformation in general.
Mhm.
Speaking of places where there's a ton of misinformation, trans rights are an issue that
Great
a lot
segue.
of people a lot of people really misunderstand. They misunderstand trans healthcare, particularly when it comes to young people and minors. As someone who was on a growth hormone for several years in my childhood, I shudder to think what would happen to me now if I was a child and I was seeking hormone therapy. So, talk a little bit about sort of your thoughts on trans rights, how it pertains to your colleagues that are Republicans, and what we should be doing to better protect our friends and family that are trans.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate you bringing it up because this is super personal for me. My little brother's trans, and my middle sibling is gender nonconforming. And actually, to tie both of the conversations we've had together, my little trans brother just gave birth yesterday to my new nephew. So
Oh
to
my
answer Ted
gosh.
Cruz's question, yes, a man can be pregnant.
Amazing.
Congratulations.
I love that. Yes,
I got to
congrats.
meet him over FaceTime. It was so cute.
Nice.
But look, like there is so much both misinformation and just ignorance around trans issues. And like, look, I get it. It's very easy to be scared of something that you don't really understand or haven't like come in contact with. And part of what I really see my role being here, I am co-chair of the Trans Equality Task Force, but also just, big sister. is to do a lot of that education. And I think a big part of that education is like humanizing these issues, because it's easy to be scared of what you don't know, what you don't understand. But at the end of the day, if you're a parent and your kid comes to you and they say that they don't feel right in their body, you want to be the one to decide what to do with their doctor. You don't want the government telling you what to do. And so
Yeah.
my little brother's a real champ, and before he was too pregnant and couldn't travel, I would make him come and meet my colleagues, so that one, they could never say that they'd never met an openly trans person.
Mm.
And two, like, he's a goofy little dude. He's a ninth grade teacher. He wears Mickey Mouse socks. Like, I'm like, this guy, this is who you're so afraid
This is who
of?
we're afraid of.
Yeah. Yeah.
But really, like, humanizing it for them. Like, it is not this like scary thing. And
Mhm.
you know, there's just, I get, like, children, like their health, their identity, that these are really personal things for people. But like, let's also be clear, when we're talking about gender affirming care, that doesn't really mean surgery. Sometimes,
Sure.
for
Yeah.
minors,
Or
almost never. Um,
Yeah.
and like, gender affirming care can be as simple as like a haircut, people using the right pronouns when they go to the doctor.
Mhm.
Um, and mental health care, it is gender affirming care. And like, there's also all this information, as you were saying, about like hormone therapy, like puberty blockers, for instance. They're reversible.
Mhm.
All they do is give a kid more time to figure it out, because it's much harder to change things if you've gone through puberty.
Mhm.
But they are reversible, they are safe. Many kids take growth hormones for a variety of reasons. Like, we're not talking about taking a bunch of kids to get a bunch of surgery at like 7 years old that they have no concept of what they're consenting to. Like, you do not do that kind, like, that is not what this is.
Right.
Yeah.
But you know what?
Right.
I just have to rebut that and say, even if it was, it's none of your business.
Well, that's fine
What?
too.
What?
Yes, agreed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That to me is, if we could summarize every single one of our episodes of this podcast, it would be, I don't understand why you're so concerned about what other people are doing. If you don't want to do that in your own family, with your doctor, in your town, whatever, then don't do it.
Then don't.
But denying other people the opportunity for the care that they need, whether that's reproductive care, whether that's hormone therapy, whether that's mental health access, all of those things, that is so rich, coming from the party that for generations has called themselves the party of small government.
Yeah.
Nothing about what they are
Nothing to
doing.
fit in our uterus.
Yeah, I
Mhm.
mean, nothing about what they are doing, almost at any turn, whether that's with our data, whether that's with our reproductive care, none of it is small. All of it is surveillance state, in your business, in your home, in your backyard, in your doctor's office. And all of that is directly against what they claim to be about. And it is
Yeah.
honestly exhausting.
Yeah, totally.
Business.
Yeah.
I mean, yes, they're all hypocrites. Also, like, they're all hypocrites. Like, they have this new, like, a bunch of them are against contraception now. I'm like, bro, either you have 100 kids I haven't met, or you don't have sex, or you use contraception. Like, those are the three options. And I know you don't have 100
Right.
kids, and maybe you don't have sex. That could be an option.
That
But
could
like,
also be.
Yeah.
Let's be
And
honest.
also that, yeah, it's probably more that. I am curious to know what you say to people who have this underlying belief that being trans is a choice, like that someone just like wakes up and is like, oh, I'm going to choose my gender today. Like, I think that so many people are of that belief system that like choosing your gender is just like the easy, like it's the thing you do to be a trans person. It's an easy thing to do. Like, oh, you just woke up and said, I want to be a boy today. Like, all of these crazy concepts and ideas. So I'm curious what you say to people who believe that.
yeah, I mean, like, I guess I would ask them if they feel like they chose their gender. And like, first of all, the idea, like, I love my trans sibling, I love my trans friends. The idea that you would choose to be trans because it's easier, like, they face so much discrimination. They face
Mhm.
so much like hatred from the outside world. They have to hear my colleagues say these horrible things about them. Like, why in the world would they be like, you know what I want to be today? Someone
Right.
who gets shat on by people all the time.
Yeah,
Like,
Yeah.
totally.
it doesn't make any sense. And like, I would encourage them to talk to a trans person, because often, like, what they'll tell you is like that it's the sense of like, my colleague Sarah McBride told me it feels like this like homesickness. Like, that's the closest feeling she can sort of like correlate it to, like this homesickness for like a home you don't know. Like,
No. Yeah.
and like
Yeah.
for my siblings, like I saw how difficult it was for them when they were struggling with their gender identity and not living as their full selves, and how much happier and like more like centered and grounded and confident they are now that they're living as their like true selves.
Yeah.
Also, like, even if it is something you choose, like, why does that bother you so much?
Exactly.
Yeah,
Get
that's
out of
also a
their
great
business.
point. Yeah.
I saw a
I,
really
uh,
hilarious thing on Instagram that was like, that sexuality isn't a choice because straight women still date men.
mhm.
And like,
Fully. Mallory and I talk
Exactly.
about this all the time. Like,
What do you mean? Yeah, I think it's so poignant to point out that I have a family member who is trans. I have friends that are trans. I've been involved in the LGBTQI community for a long time. And unless you have watched someone go through the agony that it is to not be able to be their full self and not know how to find that for themselves, um, and to see them come out on the other side of it. I have friends who have contemplated taking their lives. I have friends who have spent time in mental health facilities because of it, really trying to sort of stuff down those feelings. And on the other side of it, when they accepted who they were and they transitioned, and they're just so different now. They're so happy and able to be who they want to be or who they feel they're meant to be. And who are we to take that away from them?
yeah,
Live
I
your
mean,
life. Live your life however you want to.
I just feel like we all need to have a little more empathy for each other.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, in a world that tends to lack said empathy, I'm curious to know what is giving you hope right now in this dumpster fire of a country that we're in. What's giving you hope?
Um, So what's giving me hope is that before Congress, I worked in international conflict resolution, and I've actually like worked on and in countries that are even more torn apart than ours is right now. I know that's kind of hard to believe, but they have found ways to come back together. And the way you do that is, one, you build a broad-based pro-democracy movement, which I feel like we are building, but also the amazing things I've seen of communities coming together, like in Minneapolis, like where I represent in San Diego. Like, what I tell people is like, when they are feeling overwhelmed by what's happening at the federal level, like, go local, go pick up trash, go paint a park, go check on an immigrant neighbor and make sure that they don't need groceries, or that you could take their kid to school so they don't have to worry about getting picked up while they're taking their kid to school. Like, the way we rebuild our country is like literally neighbor by neighbor, block by block, community by community, bottom up, not top down. And I am actually feeling incredibly hopeful because I see that happening every day, in my community and communities all across this country. And the way that people have just started standing up for each other, for their neighbors, for their communities, I think we're going to get a better democracy on the other side of this as a result.
Yeah.
From your mouth to God's ears.
Yeah. Great point.
Representative Jacobs, it's been so wonderful to have you on. Thank you for sharing your wealth of knowledge on all of these very crazy, intricate, timely topics, and for leaving us with a little bit of hope at the end.
Absolutely. Thank you
Yes.
guys so much.
Thanks for being here.
Of course.